All right, welcome everybody. I think we're live now on the Ross Rams District YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone who's joining us. We're happy to have you here tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute. Just want to again thank everybody for joining us. Tonight's goal is to answer many of the questions that were submitted over the last few days. I think we had a total of 90 questions that were submitted in regards to school building operations. So again, in our responsible restart plan, we kind of broke that down into different categories to spread out the information that we would be sharing with the community, with our staff, with our students regarding the responsible restart return to school for this year. So tonight we're going to focus on school building operations. But first, before we jump into the questions, I'm going to have Becky Tompkins, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, speak a little bit and give a kind of a brief update and overview on where the remote learning plan is right now.
Thank you, Steve. So good evening, Ross students, families, and community. My name is Becky Tompkins, and I am your Director of Curriculum and Instruction. So before the building administrators begin sharing information regarding building operations and protocols, I'd like to take this opportunity to provide some general information about the remote learning option. So the remote learning option will provide students with standards-based instruction via an online learning platform called Accelerate Education. Information about Accelerate can be found on our rossrams.com website. If you click on the Responsible Restart tab and then the K-12 remote learning option details, you'll find lots of information there. So with the remote learning option, a Ross teacher will be facilitating and supporting students as they engage with that online curriculum. This means that teachers are going to be available to answer questions, grade some assignments, check in with students, reteach as necessary, and provide feedback. The other pieces that the teacher will be providing are students with opportunities to process their learning and engage with one another through that online platform. Each student participating in the remote learning option will receive a Chromebook. After the registration window closes and prior to the start of the school year, families will receive information about that Chromebook. The remote learning option does require an internet access. Students participating in the remote learning option will have access to digital tools like Study Island and RazKids from home. And students participating in the remote learning option will be participating in state tests as we have that information now, so tests like the AIR test as well. The remote learning option does require a full semester commitment. At the end of the first semester, students will have the opportunity to continue with the remote learning option or potentially return to the classroom. The dates of the semester can be found on the academic calendar on the district website. The first semester begins September 8th and then ends on January 15th. If the district were to move to a full closure, then students in the remote learning option will continue to stay within that pathway for the length of the entire semester. In the event of a full closure, students engaging in face-to-face instruction will experience blended learning. So a combination of instruction from his or her classroom teacher and conducted virtually and then offline additional instruction and practice. Grading for the remote learning option will be the same as students in face-to-face instruction as directed by board policy. We're required to account for student attendance daily. So all students, including those in the remote learning option, will need to engage with their teacher on a daily basis, but there will be flexibility with the student schedule. To participate in the remote learning option, a parent or guardian will need to complete the Google registration form. So one form must be completed for each student in the family participating in remote learning. Families of students in remote learning will begin receiving communication no later than the end of the week of August 24th. If you have specific questions about your high school students and that has to do with courses and course selection, please contact Ross High School's administrators or counselors. For any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email at becky.tompkins@rossrams.com. This information will also be on the front page of the district website tomorrow morning. So we've received feedback from families and community that in order to make a decision regarding remote learning, that you'd like to have more information about building protocols and practices. So this session is designed to respond to and listen to that request. So at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Steve Castater, who's going to be facilitating conversation with our extraordinary building administrators regarding building operations and protocols. Thanks, and today and every day, Ross Better Together.
All right, thank you, Becky. So as Becky mentioned, the format tonight is going to be a little bit as follows. We have a slideshow presentation that I'm going to share on my screen that will hopefully guide kind of the talking points as the night goes on tonight. Like I mentioned earlier, we had about 90 questions that were submitted, so we're not going to answer each question individually. However, we feel like after reviewing them as a whole, the information in the slideshow will answer most of the questions, if not all of them, and address the things that people were really wanting to know about in terms of school building operations. So when we talk about building operations, I think the major areas you're going to see that we'll touch on tonight are classroom instruction. How is that going to look? What kind of distancing are we going to be able to accomplish inside the classroom? We'll also talk about transitions. Obviously, if you're a high school or middle school student, it's a lot of transitions in hallways and moving back and forth in between classes. Lunchtime in the cafeteria. At the elementary level, there's transitions to specials classes, to lunch, to recess, all those things. So those are some of the areas that we will talk through tonight. And again, hopefully be able to answer many of the questions that were submitted over the last few days. The other thing I'll mention is that this is the first in a 4-part series that we're going to do. So we'll be here the next 3 Wednesdays as well, answering specific questions next week about COVID-19 protocol and general health and safety wellness, health, safety, and wellness. Our district nurse, Shelly Turco, along with our 3 building nurses will be on hand for that presentation to talk through some of those specifics as well. So I'm going to share my screen at this point and bring up the PowerPoint presentation, and we will jump right into the first couple topics. All right, so as you can see, we're looking at building level procedures. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is we've got a lot of questions about how is open house going to work? Is there going to be an open house? When is my child going to get their schedule? All those things. So obviously we're still in the logistical process of figuring a lot of those out, but I think we have some good information to share tonight. So you'll see the format on the screen. We're going to start first with Mr. Adam Hall and Mr. Tom Perry, principals at Elda and Morgan Elementary. And we're going to let them talk through how the open house and schedule pickup will happen for our 2 elementary buildings.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Ross families. I'll go ahead and start with Elda Elementary. We are going to be doing a virtual open house this year. Parents and guardians will be able to access an interactive, I like to call it a hub, where we'll have all of our staff members listed by departments. You'll click on their faces, and you'll be able to see a 3 to 5 minute presentation introducing themselves, some general classroom procedures, and maybe highlighting, what their rooms look like, a tour possibly. So that's what it will look like for open house this year. We will be rolling that out at the end of August 31st that week, to give you some time to view those. As far as our teacher assignments, those will be mailed to parents. We're looking to get those out hopefully at the end of next week. And you will find out your teacher at that point, along with a letter that will be mailed home, like I said earlier.
Good evening, Morgan families. Tom Perry, principal at Morgan. Very similar to Elda, our open house will be a virtual open house. Obviously, we know that's not the best thing for our kindergartners. They haven't been in the building. However, we do or will offer some videos talking about the different procedures that the kindergartners and up through grade 4 will go through. Also, preschool will be offering that. We will also offer that on a hub. In addition, we will have opportunities for live Zooms with the parents. We will tape those, record those, and offer those also for the parents to view. So we're hoping through this format that you will not miss anything, that if you cannot attend or watch anything that others are watching.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Saylor. I'm the principal at Ross Middle School. And I'd like to echo a little bit about the same sort of setup that you heard from Morgan and Elda. We will be conducting a virtual open house of some sort this year, where we'll be sharing some videos and some links on a hub where you'll be able to learn more about the teachers and the building itself. Fifth graders, incoming fifth graders last year did receive some information via video about the setup of the building. We'll be resharing that so they get a chance to see some general setup, and we're working on some other things. We love to greet our fifth graders and have them in the building. And we're trying to come up with some options to help ease that transition as well. Maybe even some things we can do on campus. We will be mailing all schedules and homeroom and teaching assignments on Friday, August 28th. So you can look to receive those shortly after that. Thank you.
Good evening, RAM families. Brian Martin, principal at Ross High School. Also on here is Mrs. Doblinger, assistant principal at the high school. First of all, students, if you're watching, and hopefully you are, just want to tell you that we miss you and we love you guys very much. And we can't wait to see you back in the building on September 8th. In terms of some of the logistics, our goal is to make it as close to the high school, the typical or normal high school experience at Ross as we possibly can. So a lot of the things that we normally do in August leading up to the start of the school year, we are going to try to maintain. For juniors and seniors, a big one is getting that coveted parking space that you've had your eye on throughout your high school career. So students, we did send information out via Final Forms yesterday about when that is going to take place. Once again, seniors are going to be able to paint their parking spaces again this year if they choose to. In terms of schedules, those are going to be mailed out to all students on Friday, August 28th. We are going to conduct an in-person open house for freshmen and for new students. That will take place in early September. And once again, those dates were sent out via email yesterday. We do think it's important for the freshmen to be able to get into the building prior to the first day of school, to find their classes, to find their lockers, just familiarize themselves with the layout of the building prior to school starting. So once again, lots more information is going to be coming out over the next few weeks, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon.
All right, thank you. I want to mention a couple things briefly before we move on to the next slide. The first is that obviously this is a live event that's being streamed on YouTube right now. For those families who may not have been able to join us tonight, this will be archived on the YouTube channel, so you'll have the ability to access it immediately after the presentation is done tonight if you need another opportunity to view the information. The second piece is I know there's a lot of information and logistical things inside in the presentation. So we will mail this PDF out to our families via Final Forms tonight as soon as the presentation is done. So you'll have a hard copy of this to be able to go through and review. We realize we're throwing a lot of information at people pretty quickly tonight. So you will have a copy of this to be able to reference moving forward. All right, so the next slide we're going to move to talks about specials. And again, that's been a common area of questions that we've got. What's music going to look like? How are we going to do PE class if we're trying to maintain social distance, and a lot of logistical things like that. So again, we'll start with our two elementary buildings and let them talk through how specials are going to look for them this year.
Yeah, obviously one of our goals at the elementary is to keep our cohorts, our groups together as much as possible. Part of that is also to limit our hallway transitions so we don't have a lot of students passing, because many times when we have a schedule change, we literally have 6 classes all changing in one intersection. So to alleviate that, we are having our special areas travel to the classrooms. We are going to do our specials on a 3-week rotation. So what's going to happen is they will have music for 3 weeks. Then the next 3 weeks, they'll have art. And then the last 3 weeks, they'll have gym. Our phys ed will take place sometimes in a classroom, depending on whether it's some health activities. They may possibly use the gym a little bit, some in that time period, or outside. Obviously with phys ed, good weather, we're going to try to get outside as much as possible. Art also will be coming to the classroom, and the goal for the first 3 weeks starting out is the art teacher is going to use the classroom materials that the students already have that was on the student list. To once again, to alleviate a lot of the cleaning protocol. And, our whole goal is not to share materials with students. Music, once again, will be coming to the classroom. Music will not be singing or playing recorders for the first rotation for sure. After that, we will evaluate and assess things, see where we are, to see if we can't incorporate or integrate some of that into the music program in the elementaries.
Okay, for the middle school, we will continue to offer a range of special area classes, including art, music, our tech ed classes, life skills, depending on your grade level and your schedule, that will help determine which of those classes you would attend. You know, obviously things like PE, we are trying to do the best we can to social distance, not only within the gym, but use outdoor areas, perhaps the new turf field, various areas like that where we can get kids outside, where they can do a better job of socially distancing while still participating in those courses. Focusing on fifth grade band and choir, we've had a lot of questions about those. Our show choir was able to rehearse some over the summer. We did follow similar to our athletic department guidelines where they were outside and we had face shields, mask, which did allow for some singing and activities outside with appropriate social distancing. As of right now, for the start of the year, fifth and sixth grade band and choir are not going to be an option due to the way we'll have to do our schedule. However, I've been speaking with Mr. Morlock and Mrs. Watley even today, and we're trying to come up with some alternatives and ways to do that as guidance will allow as the year progresses. Seventh and eighth grade choir and band, as of this moment, we still plan to offer. We're going to offer some additional sections of that throughout the day so that we can allow for smaller numbers in the classrooms at any given time, which will allow for some additional social distancing, as well as use outdoor areas similar to what we did this summer so that perhaps we can continue playing and singing and performing wonderful music like we always do at RMS.
At the high school and at all our buildings, we believe that extracurriculars are an extremely important part of the educational process and opportunities to provided to our students. So we are going to continue to do everything we can to make sure that our students are able to experience those types of things. So performance music, that being band and choir at the high school, we are going to get creative in terms of how we're going to utilize our space so that they are able to continue to have the opportunity to perform and engage in those activities. So we're going to be utilizing the outdoors. We're going to be utilizing some of the larger areas in our building, in addition to the masks that all students are going to be required to wear. Our students are also utilizing face shields as well. Same thing with our physical education classes. Once again, just getting creative with our space so that we're able to have adequate social distancing, also utilizing the outdoor areas of our campus as well. So not to be repetitive, but we want students to have as close to a normal experience as they possibly can when they return to school. And obviously our music and physical education programs are an important part of that experience.
All right, very good. At this time, we're going to move on to our next section, which will be slide number 5, classroom transitions. Mr. Hall, are you going to cover that for the elementary level?
I am. So as Mr. Perry had stated earlier, we're trying to keep these students in their cohort groups within their classrooms. So the only transitions that'll occur at the elementary level are to lunch and from lunch, to recess and from recess, and then arrival and dismissal with those same groups. So that is the elementary transitions, not very many.
All right, and I'm going to talk about Ross Middle School and classroom transitions. I'm Tony Albrink. I'm the assistant principal. Good evening. We are going to continue to have students move between classrooms like we always have. The big difference for us is going to come in 7th and 8th grade, where they're going to travel as a homeroom as opposed to kind of being mixed up and switching around and being with a lot of different kids. So we're really going to try to create those cohorts for kids like we have in 5th and 6th grade. So they're going to move from one class to another with the same group of kids as opposed to being mixed up. Also, in addition to that, we're adjusting the master schedule to eliminate traffic in the hallways. We're going to stagger dismissals by team and potentially by grade level to eliminate a lot of our congestion in the hallway. Kids will not be able to visit their lockers in between classes. They'll be expected to head directly to their next class so that they're not lingering and mixing around in the hallways too often.
Similar approach at the high school. Obviously, the nature of the way that our schedule is set up in our classes does make it necessary for kids to transition multiple times during the day. However, as I mentioned previously, all students and staff will be required to wear masks at all times. So that's an important part of our safeguards. We are going to social distance during our transitions to the extent that we can. And what I mean by that is we are still exploring the possibility of directional hallways, so meaning one-way hallways, also utilizing the exterior doors of the building for students to move from one wing to another. Students, like the middle school students, will also be discouraged from utilizing their lockers. There will be exceptions made for students who absolutely need to store things in their locker during the day, but we want to discourage students from congregating at their lockers throughout the course of the day. Once again, we are going to do everything we can to make sure that these transitions are smooth, to avoid the sort of congregating that might be typical during the course of a school day. We are staggering our dismissal procedures so that our student drivers will actually be dismissed a little bit earlier than our bus drivers at the end of the day. Just as an example of a way that we're going to try to cut down on the congestion and the grouping of students at any point in the building.
Yeah, great points. And I want to kind of echo something that Mr. Martin just mentioned, is that, again, as we sit here today on August the 10th, we're still just a little less than a month away from the start of school. So one of the things that the district made the decision to do very early on in the process this summer was to push back the start date on the calendar to September 8th, the Tuesday after Labor Day, which bought us some time to continue to work on our plan. And as most of you have seen throughout this pandemic, this has been a rapidly moving target. Things seem to change by the hour, by the day. Information comes and goes. And so we really felt like it was important to buy that time in our calendar to ensure that we had the best and safest plan that we could possibly have. So that's, again, I think we put it on the first slide, that in the bottom right, information within this presentation is subject to change. Obviously, as we get new recommendations and guidance from the state of Ohio Health Department, from the Butler County Health Department, who we have worked very closely with over the last 3 to 4 months, there may be some additions and changes, and we'll do our very best to continue to communicate that to our families moving forward. So we're going to move now to slide number 6, right? We already talked about classroom transitions, which is, again, another, a lot of questions that we received through the Google form was about cafeteria and lunch procedures. Mr.
Tom,
Perry?
I think you're muted.
With cafeteria procedures, once again, our goal is to social distance as much as possible. So what we've done is we have cut our capacity to 50%. So instead of our normal amount of students in the classroom or from the classrooms into the cafeteria, we've cut it in half, and we're moving the tables, as much as we can to try to socially distance the tables. Within the cafeteria, going into the line, and in the cafeteria floor, we will have 6-foot markers. And once again, I think the challenge at the elementary is to train the students, to educate them what 6 foot is. So as we walk through the hallways, when we get to the cafeteria, when we're in line, we will have that in place. Obviously, we will have sanitizing stations there in the cafeteria. We also have clear dividers that will go in the middle of the tables, which will allow our students to have a divider right across from each other. We're also looking at separate entrances and exits from the cafeteria. So once again, to keep those students from, coming through the hallways, traveling right by each other. We'll look at things like when they go to throw their food away, it will be as they exit. So we believe we have things put in place that will make the cafeteria a place that the students will be distanced.
Yeah, and the middle school has a lot of the same ideas as the elementaries. We're going to split kids up between the cafeteria and the multi-purpose room to reduce the amount of kids in either area. Students are going to have assigned seats at lunch and sit with the same group of students every day to reduce the amount of kids that they're interacting with in there. They're going to get sent to designated areas on staggered times. So the kids who pack will report to the multi-purpose room immediately. The kids who are buying will go to the cafeteria. They're going to have to remain seated the whole time. And then same thing, we've always had one-way entrance, one-way exit. And we have additional time in between for increased deep cleaning.
Good evening, everyone. At the high school, as we talked about ever changing, we actually changed our procedures for today, this afternoon. Instead of students who pack who will eat in the auditorium, we actually are going to have those students eat in the gym. We will be pulling out the bleachers every day and allowing students to socially distance in the gym, entering through a separate entrance to avoid the cafeteria entirely. Our buyers will be socially distanced, waiting in line for their food. All of our cafeteria staff will have barriers, and I do believe there's another presentation that will talk specifically about the cafeteria at a later date. Our goal is to only have 5 students per table, so 50% capacity within our cafeteria. We do have circle tables, so that would allow for 5 students at those tables, and we will socially distance those tables as best we can to accommodate those standards. We will have our students remain seated the entirety of the lunch period outside of moving to their seat after getting their lunch, and there will be one way to dispose of the trash. And then we've also built in additional time into each lunch period in order to properly sanitize the areas in which our students are using. It is our goal, especially with our juniors and seniors, to even reduce capacity by allowing them to only participate in coursework that they need to participate. Obviously, if they are athletes and have to be eligible, we have to take that into consideration. But it is our goal to reduce the number of students within our building each day, and we are working through that process currently.
All right, very good. We're gonna move to slide number 7, which talks specifically about recess, which again was a question that we got often through the Google form for this week's session.
So at the elementary level, we've allotted an hour for each grade level, which gives each teacher 15 minutes of recess. Recess will be monitored by the teacher. We will only have one class out at a time instead of our full grade levels like we used to do. Playground equipment will not be used. And we've partnered with our phys ed teacher at each building to kind of help create some activities and some planned items that students are able to use out or to participate in out there. And that way the teacher is more monitoring the safety and behaviors rather than running, certain games. So it's coaching our kids up to learn some of those games and be able to do some fun things out on the playground, run around a little bit. And that's the recess at the elementary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Rettinger. I'm the Dean of Students at Ross Middle School and also the Assistant AD for the district. I hope everyone is doing well tonight. We will not be having traditional 5th and 6th grade recess offered at this time at the middle school. We will have mass breaks and things that are built inside of the 5th and 6th grade schedule, but we will not have traditional outdoor recess.
Just a quick comment about recess and playground equipment specifically. As I mentioned, we've spent the last few months meeting multiple times a week with the health department, and they've been providing a lot of the guidance for us. And one of the things that they told us is that there are very specific cleaning protocols that would have to be used multiple times a day in order to be able to even consider using any type of playground equipment. this year. So again, just not having the capacity to be able to thoroughly clean any touched playground equipment surface multiple times a day to be able to use that is the reason why we came to that decision to not use it and just allow students to engage in other activities during that recess time. So we're going to move on to slide number 8 now, which will talk about restroom usage. And again, trying to limit capacity in the hallways and transitions. That's going to shape a lot of the policies that we're going to look at now.
Yeah, so once again, at the elementary, as you know, working with students to socially distance walking through the hallways is a challenge, let alone having them wait as a class outside a restroom. So what we're going to do there is, once again, we're going to have social distancing markers on the floor with a certain amount of students going into the restroom, and then they will line up outside. One of the things we'll also be doing is they'll be leaving the restroom or the classroom to go to the restroom. So they're going to sign out and sign back in. So that way we have tracking if there's any type of contact tracing that we need to be done. Our kindergarten and at Morgan, our preschools, they have restrooms in the classroom. So there'll be a procedure there for the classroom usage for the classrooms that have a restroom.
And at the middle school, typically students use the restroom between classes. With the change in our schedule, obviously we don't want a bunch of kids going in and out of the restroom at the same time. So we will discourage that. Students will report to their classes. Teachers will have additional passes where they can let out very small groups of kids into the restrooms at one time. 5th and 6th may still walk their classes down outside the restrooms and allow a few students in at one time.
At the high school, we are going to obviously discourage use of restrooms during class transitions, once again, to reduce the gathering of individuals at any one point at any one time. And students are allotted an additional number of passes that they can use for the restroom from their class time. In an ideal situation, obviously, we would not want students missing instructional time to go to the bathroom, but these are not ideal circumstances. So we're going to make some accommodations. High school students being a little bit older and theoretically more mature than younger kids, we feel like this is a good solution. And I know our kids won't abuse this situation. So we feel pretty comfortable with allowing our kids the freedom to utilize those additional passes for the bathroom.
All right, very good. We're going to transition to number 9 now, which talks about hygiene practices and hand washing routines and cycles, and how we're going to allow for additional time for that to happen during the day.
So we have a unique situation at the elementary level. Most of our classrooms already had sanitizing stations built in. We have adjusted that to make sure every classroom has one. Before and after lunch will be a required time for sanitizing hands before and after recess. After using the restroom, obviously, entering and exiting the classroom will be another time for that. And then as the teacher sees fit during possible instruction, there might be moments where students are sanitizing hands. Just keep in mind that they will be at separate desks all day long, so they will have their own individual spaces. So as far as moving around in high touch areas all around the classroom, they'll be responsible for just that one area, which is kind of nice at the elementary level as well.
As far as hand sanitation at the middle school, it'd be similar. We will have hand sanitizing stations available at every classroom and various areas throughout the building. As students transition to new classes, they will be asked to obviously sanitize their hands as they enter. Be encouraged to do that as they leave. Cafeteria areas, similar to what we've done in the past, they'll be asked to wash their hands, use the hand sanitizers before they eat lunch. We also have some signage in the restroom. We'll be encouraging students talking about proper hand washing techniques and making sure that when students enter and leave the restroom, they are encouraged to wash their hands and clean them thoroughly before they return to class.
More of the same at the high school. Our maintenance and custodial staff is already hard at work prepping the building, installing hand sanitizers in every classroom, as well as additional sanitation stations throughout the building. So we're confident that students will have a lot of access to disinfect and clean their hands multiple times throughout the day.
Very good. Move on to number 10, which is media center usage.
So at the elementary, our media center is used quite often. So at this time, our media center, as far as our typical go to the media center, check books out, is going to be stopped at this time. The media centers will be closed for checking out books. However, we will have the media specialists go into the classrooms, just like our special areas, and deliver the media instruction. Also, we are looking at a system where students can check out books. We deliver those to the rooms, the specific books. They just won't be allowed to browse and touch all the books. So the books that they check out, we will take to the rooms. And once again, when they turn those in, we have protocol that we'll set those aside for cleaning or whatever we need to do with those. So the labs will not be used. The good thing is this year in the elementary is we are getting all new Chromebooks. So as we phase out the labs this year not being used, it will fit right well with the fact that we will have one-to-one all new Chromebooks. So checking the books out will be limited, but we're hoping to really use the access the digital libraries. We have purchased a new program, or are purchasing one called Myon that we use somewhat through the remote learning this past spring that has tens of thousands of books. So we will be doing a little more digital books. Classroom teachers, same process when it comes to books. They have their class libraries. They will most likely have a protocol where they'll pick certain books out for students, and those students will have those books for a week, and then the teachers will collect those books and give them other books that they can use for the following week and so on.
And at the middle school will be a similar sort of process. I mean, at this time, as we start the year, our media center, which is used frequently, will not be available to browse and check out books. You know, hopefully as things settle, we'll be able to do a little more of that. A lot of our English language arts teachers do have classroom libraries, which they, at the start of the year, we won't do as much access, but we are working on a process after we're a few weeks in and things have settled down. We've gotten used to the routine where they could develop possibly a system where teachers or students could then borrow books from their teachers if they need a physical copy of a book. Mr. Perry mentioned the program we're getting for the access to a digital library. All middle school students, grades 5 through 8, are one-to-one. We'll have a Chromebook that they are able to bring home with them every day. So they will have access to that same digital library program. And we also have a book room that, as the year settles in, where we will be able to, English language arts teachers, various teachers will be able to provide some hard copies of books, probably after the first few weeks of school and we've settled in.
At the high school, we will be utilizing our media center for students needing space to complete their CCP coursework at any of the colleges or universities that they have signed up for. This is typically utilized for students who are doing CCP courses who do not have the time to drive home or who have additional classes throughout the day. This space will continue to be used for that, as well as other classes in order to maintain more social distance within the building.
All right. Next slide, number 11, talks a little bit more about specific interactions and operations within each individual classroom.
So at the elementary level, each student desk will have a study carrel for independent student work that we will set up on top of those desks. Flexible seating will be eliminated at this time to maximize our floor space to properly social distance. All desks will be placed in rows facing in a similar direction. Non-essential furniture items have been removed from classrooms or are currently being removed from classrooms as we speak, to once again allow for maximum distance in those, maximum space in those classrooms. Social distancing, heavy hitter will occur to the greatest extent possible given the size of that classroom, as each of our classrooms are different in size. So we are going to do the best possible job we can to social distance these kids and keep them as safe as possible.
Yep, and the middle school, a lot of the same ideas, non-essential furniture removed, flexible seating eliminated, rows of desks as opposed to circles or any other configuration. We're going to have carols for each desk. Really, probably the biggest difference you'll see is a very traditional instructional style, probably more teacher-led lecture type instruction as opposed to collaborative group work, which we've done a lot of here recently. But that'll change, just enable social distancing as much as possible. So a lot of the same ideas as at the elementaries.
More of the same at the high school. Once again, eliminating flexible seating, removing non-necessary furniture items, similar to what the other buildings have described. One of the other changes that we will be making, or in the process of making, as Mrs. Doblinger alluded to earlier, is reducing the number of bodies in each particular classroom. So we are doing that by allowing juniors and seniors more flexibility in terms of adjusting their schedules, eliminating courses that are not required for them to graduate. So juniors, seniors, if you're watching and you haven't contacted your counselor to take advantage of that, and that's something you're interested in, please reach out to your counselor and explore that possibility with them, if in fact that's something you are interested in, eliminating or postponing classes that are not required for graduation at this point.
All right, next slide talks about lockers and student storage areas.
Tom, I think you're muted.
Harry, I think you're muted.
Man, I'm telling you, get with it. The elementaries, we don't have lockers, so we have our individual cubbies in the classroom to store items, as it says, jackets, hats, supplies, and so forth. We also have desks, so each student has their own desk. So that's where they'll store their supplies, their materials. So once again, that will cut down on our students have to go into lockers or cubbies and things like that for their supplies.
Yep. And at the middle school, students will still be assigned a locker. So every student's going to have a locker. One change is they're going to be allowed to carry backpacks with them this year, which is different than what we've done in the past. This will hopefully eliminate the need to visit their locker during the day. So ideally, they're only going to go when they first get there in the morning, maybe at lunchtime to grab their lunch if they packed, and at the end of the day to pack up and grab their stuff. Now, hopefully that's the case, with rare exceptions, the only time that they're going to their lockers.
At the high school level, as it was mentioned before, our students will be assigned to lockers, but discouraged from using them throughout the day as much as possible. For students who it's an absolute necessity to use your locker, we would just ask that they are mindful of the people around them while putting things in there to ensure that they are not getting too close. While students at the high school won't need to carry much, we are allowing backpacks and purses and drawstring bags this year to help alleviate the load that the students will be carrying. But I think in the next slide, when we talk about supplies, there will be a limited number of supplies the students will need to bring each day. So those items won't necessarily be needed.
All right, very good. I'm going to jump back real quick to slide 11 and ask Mr. Perry if he can. We had a question that just came through that talked about a study carrel and what that might look like. We got a couple questions saying we're not sure what that actually means or what it might be. Can you kind of explain a little bit how that might look on a student's desk as they're sitting in their classroom during the day?
What we have is we have three-sided, basically it's like a plastic partition, and there's three sides. It's 20 inches tall, and it fits exactly on our elementary desks. So at that point, the whole purpose of that is it blocks that student's area. And once again, it is a three-sided, so it is on both sides of the student and in front of the student.
Right. So just another additional layer of protection. Obviously, our students can be wearing masks when they're in the classroom, but this would create another barrier between them and the teacher who may be moving around the room, as well as the other students who are sitting to the left, right, or in front of a student in a classroom. Good clarification. Move on to slide number 13, which would be schedule adjustments and modifications.
So at the elementary level, at the arrival and dismissal times, we've built in 15 minutes at the beginning of our day and 15 minutes at the end of our day to accommodate students that and buses and drop-offs and so on and so forth, just to allow time for those kids not only to enter our classrooms when they arrive, but as they dismiss our building as well. So we're able to stagger students as they enter and exit the building. So the way it would look in the morning with our buses, to get specific with it a little bit, we would do a bus at a time and do it by buses that way. And then as far as our dismissal process, having the car riders come down by certain areas of the hallways or by teachers. And this is something we have to fine tune a little bit with specific procedure, but just to give you an idea of what that would look like. That's the dismissal and arrival process at the elementary level.
At Ross Middle School, we redid the master schedule for 5 through 8 to put all of our students in cohorts so that they can travel around with the same group all day. That's probably more of a change for 7th and 8th than it is for 5th and 6th. Also, we will have a longer homeroom bell at the beginning of the day to allow our kids coming into the building with a little bit flex times in there for the transportation and bus drop-offs, and be able to get them in and out of the buildings and still abide by the social distancing. And then at the end of the day, all of our students will have a study hall or an intervention at the end of the day, because we will have staggered release times when the buses get here, just like when they're dropping them off in the morning. Same thing at the end of the day.
As we referenced earlier, we're allowing upperclassmen to adjust their schedules to eliminate any non-required courses for graduation if that's something they desire. And once again, the hope and the intent behind that is to reduce the number of students who are in the building at any given time. As Mrs. Doblinger referenced earlier, we did add additional time to our lunch block to give us more time between lunches so that we could do a little bit deeper cleaning between each lunch shift. One more item that actually became finalized today is we are shifting back the start of the day 10 minutes. Don't worry, students, we're letting you out 10 minutes early as well, so you're not spending any more time in school. But in order for us to stagger dismissal at the end of the day and alleviate some crowding and transportation issues, students are going to attend from 7:10 to 2 p.m. as opposed to 7:20 to 2:10 as they have in previous years. So once again, not a huge shift, only 10 minutes, but that 10 minutes is important to allow us to stagger our dismissal. We will actually be dismissing our student drivers at approximately 1:50 in the afternoon to get them out of the building, to alleviate any crowding before dismissing the remainder of students for buses. And parents and students and also any staff that might be watching as well, we'll be sending out additional information regarding that time change within the next couple days. Once again, that was just finalized today, was that shift in the schedule.
Steve, if you don't mind, and team, if you don't mind, I'd like to add something just with our dismissal process at the elementary level, specifically in regards to car riders. We are looking at going back to the rolling dismissal. Parents would not be entering the building at this time to pick up students. We will go back to a rolling dismissal with some safety measures built in place with that as well.
All right, the slide number 14, we're down to our final two, and then we'll have a couple other additional items we'll cover before we sign off here, but let's talk through supply list.
So obviously, parents, you didn't get the supply list until a couple of weeks ago. Our teachers have been working hard modifying those lists. So they were developed by grade levels. They adapt them a little bit because of the art and the music coming to the classrooms, and the fact that we are eliminating sharing of materials. So you should have received that. We emailed that. It's posted on our website, and we sent it to the stores. And also, obviously, we are asking, you need to wear masks. The students do, so you need to bring some masks. and also the water bottle. And we will have water bottle filling stations in the hallways, and in the classroom, they can use the sink. The water fountains themselves will be shut off, so they cannot use the water fountain and put their mouth on the water fountain receiver as the water comes out. So hopefully you receive those supply lists. If not, once again, go on our website and they are posted there for our supplies.
Almost the exact same for Ross Middle School. Took a little longer to get the supply list going with all of the changes. Those have been sent home and it's on the website. Probably the biggest thing is all the students need to bring a mask, make sure they bring a filled water bottle and their Chromebooks every day, and probably a good idea to have an extra mask in their backpack and maybe an extra water bottle that they have in their locker just in case they forget one of those items.
At the high school, at least to start, we are asking that students have 2 masks per day, just to, in case something were to happen. We also ask that they bring a filled water bottle to school. We will also have the water bottle fill stations, but our typical drinking fountains will be eliminated or will be covered, so students will not be able to use those. And we ask specifically that they bring their Chromebook and charger every day. And if they could charge those each day, that will help them. If your student needs to bring a notebook and a pen, that is fine as well. And then we will work with our teachers on their individual supply list to try to reduce the amount of supplies required, specifically because students will not be using their lockers this year.
Yeah, before we transition to the last slide, I want to address masks a little bit. Obviously, as you can imagine, that's probably the #1 question that we've received over the last month is what masks are allowed, what masks aren't allowed, can I wear a bandana instead of a mask? So the current district's policy and acceptance on masks is that really we're limited it to 3 different kinds. So we'll try to show them on my screen here if I can, but this would be a traditional cloth mask. These are actually being sold by the athletic department right now. I think shameless plug for our fundraiser to the athletic department, but this would be an acceptable cloth mask. We're also allowing disposable masks. And these disposable masks will be what is available on our buses as well. We realize that students are occasionally going to forget a mask, and you're going to be in a rush getting to the bus stop or getting to your car to get to school in the morning. And we know that that's going to happen occasionally. So we have worked with the Butler County Educational Service Center to get a lot of masks to be able to provide in emergency situations. Again, we don't want students to make a habit of needing to come in and grab a mask every day. We're not going to allow them to do that. But we will have some on hand, and these disposable medical type masks are acceptable as well. The last thing I'll show that we're allowing as an acceptable mask are the neck gaiters. If you can see that, a little bit longer, that be worn around the neck and have the ability to be pulled up over the mouth and nose. Those would be, the 3 types of masks that we're going to allow at this time. So no bandanas that are tied in the back around the face. And then the other really common question that we received is, well, what if I don't want to wear a mask and want to wear a plastic face shield instead? I know people have seen those that kind of go around the forehead and come down. And the guidance we've been given from the Butler County Health Department is that a face shield is not a replacement for a mask. And that in the medical community, those shields are actually worn to protect the eyes and not to protect the nose and the mouth. So if you're at a dentist or a doctor or nurse or in any type of medical office, you'll notice that the majority of the time, people who have the shields on also have a mask on underneath them. So the face shields will be used in certain situations. I'll give an example of a student who might be receiving speech services, where it would be necessary for the student and for the speech therapist to be able to see one another's mouth movements in order to be effective in that practice. We will allow that to happen on a temporary basis with some distancing for those types of services. But the moment that students would go back into the classroom, they're going to be required to wear one of the 3 kinds of masks that we just showed on the screen. So hopefully that clears up some of the confusion and questions that we received on what type of masks are appropriate. So we're going to move on to the last slide now, number 15, which is just some miscellaneous items. And building administrators, I would encourage you at this time, if there's anything else that you feel like that the slideshow hasn't covered that you want to address, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left here to kind of roll through these final few items.
All right, just some extra safeguards at the elementary levels. We are installing plexiglass in the main office for our secretaries and at the lunch checkout counter as well for our cafeteria staff as students are checking out. The building foyer will be utilized as much as possible for visitors. We're looking to set up a table. So for if a student forgot a lunch, they're able to drop off their lunch, just kind of sign in, make sure that name's on that lunch. We'll have a marker and some different materials out there for that. And that way, you know, we're kind of minimizing our exchange from adult to adult at that point. Student pickup, like I had mentioned earlier, will be a rolling pickup. I knew I jumped the gun on that one, Mr. Perry. And rolling pickup just simply means that people will stay in their cars. We will ID you from those cars, and we'll try to get a substantial list of those families so we have an idea of who's coming to pick up those students, which has changed from adults coming into the building at that point. It will be extremely helpful for parents to commit if you can. This would help us out tremendously. If you're able to commit to, you know, the bus or being a car rider every day, that's going to be huge for us. And if we could please ask, and this is a little plug as well, Steve, if we could get, you know, to commit by maybe like 11, 12 o'clock PM, that'll give us time to get the list and get information to those kids on who's picking them up and that they're a car rider for the day. So if we can really, if you could help us out with that, that'd be awesome. And we appreciate you.
I just want to say that, you know, to our parents, the Morgan parents, and I know Elda parents is, you know, we're excited about the students coming back, and we know the best thing for the kids is to be in school. We're going to do everything we can to work with the child. We know the mask is a very difficult and challenging thing for parents to, you know, say, hey, they don't need a mask, or how they're going to wear it all day. What we need from you, though, is also support of this. You know, there's things that we may not all agree with, but we have to work together. We have to support each other on this. And parents, please talk to your child, talk about the masks, practice them wearing masks if you haven't done that yet. And, you know, we're going to get through this together. You know, we're going to try to build in as many mask breaks as we can without, you know, putting our students in harms with so many people in the hallways, so many people outside. But we're going to have a working plan, and we will get through this. And we do appreciate all the support from our parents that we know we've already gotten and that we will get. And if you have any questions, once again, Morgan parents, email me. I will get back to you with the answers the best I can in this ever-changing time that we're in. And we look forward to seeing the kids coming back in September.
No doubt.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. And honestly, at the middle school, we'd like to echo a lot of what Mr. Perry and Mr. Hall were already talking about. I mean, first and foremost, you can't begin to imagine how excited the staff at the middle school is with the prospect of having students back in the building, getting a chance to see our youngsters as they come back, and we're looking forward to hearing and seeing them back at school. You will see, obviously, as they mentioned, there are going to be some changes and things that are different. Similar idea, we're working on installing an intercom type system so we can use, as the kids would call it, the fishbowl area in the front for, you know, forgotten items. Same as Mr. Hall mentioned, there'll be a table there where you can drop things off and communicate, and we'll work with parents on that. We'll be putting plexiglass up in the office for those who do need to enter to, you know, help with that distancing between the office secretarial staff and the families. We didn't mention earlier, but similar to that was mentioned at the elementaries, there'll be some plexiglass up to help some division of the lunch tables. We are looking and working with Mr. Huff, our maintenance supervisor, to replace several drinking fountains so that we have the water bottle fillable stations for students as well throughout the day, so that we have that available. Visitors are going to be very limited. You know, that'll be a change for a lot of us. I know coming to eat lunch with students and things, we just won't be able to do that this year. So Regrettably, we will have to make that change. You will get some more information about our dismissal. It's a little bit different than at the elementary. Students typically at the middle school, when the bell rings, they head out to their buses or to the cars that they ride. We are working with our transportation department, as was mentioned earlier by, I believe, Mr. Rettinger. Well, there'll be some time at the end of the day that hopefully we can dismiss by bus. And then probably at the very end of the day, we will dismiss the car riders to head out to the parking lot where people can park. But we'll get some additional information about that out to everyone as those plans are finalized with transportation. And again, just to say, we're super excited to have students back on campus. We've had some extracurriculars up and running, and the kids have done a great job so far, meeting all the guidelines and requirements that have been set forth. I was super impressed with our athletes and our next generation students. They've been wearing masks and coming and doing everything they have been asked to do so that we can keep things up and running. And it's going to be great. We appreciate your support and all the help that you guys have given us and you continue to give us every year.
Much of the same as what some of the other principals have said. Once again, students, we can't wait to see you back in the building. Mrs. Doblinger is tired of talking to just me every day, and we can't wait to have you guys back and in the hallways. So as Mr. Perry alluded to, there are going to be things about this fall and in the months ahead that, that we don't like, that we aren't all crazy about. But when we talk about being better together, that can't just be something that we use as a hashtag when we're on social media. That means we have to practice that when times are tough. And times are tough right now. And like I said, there are things that we might not be crazy about doing right now, but we have to do some of those things to protect each other and take care of each other and make sure that we're all able to be back together in the building in the months to come. So students, we love you. Can't wait to see you next month. And once again, any parent who has a question, a concern, please don't hesitate to reach out. Parents, the communication we sent out yesterday had my email, Ms. Stoblinger's email, our direct lines, as well as those of the counselors as well. Please do not let any of your questions or concerns go unanswered. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. So thank you for joining us tonight. Go Rams.
Yeah. Again, thank you to everyone for joining us. And just to reiterate a couple points. One is that the video will be archived on the district YouTube channel. So if you weren't able to see a part of it or want to rewatch it, it'll be available there as soon as we're done with the presentation. And that we will be emailing the PDF of the slideshow that we went through tonight to everyone through Final Forums this evening. So you'll have access to that as well. Just a reminder, we'll be back here again next Wednesday, August 19th at 6 p.m. with our district nursing staff to talk through some specific COVID protocol, how that might look in the nurse's office this year. We're very excited that for the first time ever, or in a long time, I'm not sure, we actually will have a full-time nurse in every building this year. So one full-time person dedicated to each of our four schools, which is a huge win for us, and another thing that we're trying to do, again, in order to ensure that we're returning to school as safely as we possibly can. So again, thanks everyone for joining, and we will see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ross families.